what I wanted to say is, one of the comments that you made is that this kind of lesson is taxing for both the students and the professor when teaching in a second language. And so that's something that Jennifer and I do. We teach Spanish, and we are constantly telegraphing the message and using gestures and arms and vocal intonation and jumping up and down and dancing and doing all sorts of things. And you know, our goal is we are teaching speaking, reading, writing, listening, and understanding all in a second language. And so it is taxing when somebody doesn't get it. And you know, we are responsible for everybody in that classroom, trying to get them all involved every single class period and numerous occasions throughout the same class period. And so it's very difficult. And I was wondering, you know, when you said about earning a student's trust and then getting students to trust each other, I'm just wondering, what are some things that you do to create trust in the classroom and to get students to trust each other, particularly when you do have different levels of experience in the classroom. And in our cases, as we go up the ranks and get into higher levels of Spanish, you get the heritage speakers in there who speak Spanish with a fluency, versus people who are brand new, and I didn't have them last semester, so I don't know what their training has been in Spanish.
Right.
So I have a wide range of experiences and abilities. And then getting them to trust me, and here I'm speaking in Spanish, and as the higher up I go in the Spanish courses, the gesturing becomes more minimal.
Right.
It's big.
But the vocabulary
In 103, 104, 203, it's still there, but it's becoming smaller. 303, it's more like normal, you know, and so I'm just wondering, what do you do to create trust and build community in the classroom?
That's a great question. I think one of the things, I'll get up off the floor. One of the things that I personally do is that, as I mentioned a little bit before, I do a community circle, which I think is not necessarily discipline specific, although it worked very well with 5-year-olds when I taught 5-year-olds, and it worked well with 12-year-olds when I taught 12-year-olds. But just going around and saying, you know, today I feel sad because my best friend is having marital problems, you know? And like that just kind of establishes a common humanity in the classroom. I also really use humor a lot, and kind of physical humor. I'm a little bit of a goofball, so they, you know, I kind of cultivate a little bit of mutual affection in the classroom. I also am, I keep in touch with some of them over Facebook, although I tell them to be more private. If they plan on friending me, then they are, but they don't often listen. But I am on Facebook, and so I have like an Alverno students list. Anybody who's on that list can't see a whole deal of my personal life, but it's kind of interesting, and that actually gives me a little bit of heads up on some of them if they're having struggles. Because, you know, that's kind of it's a public diary for a lot of people. So that's been kind of interesting for me the last couple of semesters to see that.
We were commenting that we do like your visual, and we would like to borrow that. But maybe we could do something like that if they could draw a picture of how they're feeling, and then
well, and there is actually what I wanted to get when I had that, but it's way too demanding for the scope of this particular class. But there's a wonderful cartoon poster that has sentimientos at the top that has probably like 40 different feelings on it, and I used that when I was teaching, because I also wanted to increase my 6-year-olds' emotional vocabulary, because even for conflict resolution in a you know, children in a classroom with children, you want to be able to say, I'm frustrated, as opposed to, I'm angry all the time, I'm angry today, because, you know, if you need more words for angry, it's like, are you frustrated? Are you irritated? Are you tired? Are you grouchy? Those are all different connotations. So,
well,
yes.
I'm thinking,
yes, all of the above.
I'm thinking, to go back to that student's comment about feeling incompetent because she was working in a language that wasn't her own. And that's what we're confronted with on a daily basis, is this lack of, because they're adult learners and feeling out of control and fearful making mistakes and then fearful of looking stupid in front of their peers.
Or maybe giving them a language, maybe having them create something like this and giving them a language to talk about that. At least lets them unload some of that baggage and also see that other people in the classroom have some of those same anxieties and fears. So now they're not in a place where they're the only one, But it's another way of kind of, maybe, so creating some of those things and then keeping those up in the classroom, because you can do that. They're gonna come back twice a week and they've got that stuff. And building it over time. It would be something that would both build a community, but it would also let them talk about some of the things that they're feeling while they're learning a language. I think that would be a way of doing that.
What's also something that I noticed today while watching it is just how all of my students are making assumptions about everybody else's experience. And so Hadassah, who's super bilingual, she said when she read the reflection, she was so surprised that so few other people understood, and that it was much harder for them than it was for her. And Christina on the other end of the continuum, who was just like, wow, I was surprised that that I was really the only one, and everybody else seemed to understand more than I did. And so there's just this really wide array of what students think they can do and what they think everybody else can do and understand. And like Jessica said, she said that she was really watching everybody to see how much risk they would take, and that was going to affect how much risk she was going to take as a learner. That was interesting to watch.
And how does that relate to what our expectations are for them? They might set their sights on the best language speaker in the class and make that their goal, whereas our goals might be much more reasonable for them. And do they understand that?
I think that ability to let them take risk is also related to how safe they feel about making mistakes. So you can create an environment which somehow permeates and says, this is where we want to make mistakes, because that's how we're going to learn. Rather than putting a value judgment, if you will, on making that mistakes are bad and doing it right is good, that this is what we do in order for us to learn.
I agree, and also when Kevin said that if you let them express themselves and say how frustrated they are, I think it's very important not to get defensive, because if you do, then that's it. They're not going to open up again. So if you start saying, oh no, you don't, just sort of accept it.
But also, on the second week of class, that was when we did our first community circle. And all they had to do was say, I feel blank today. And if they wanted to say because, great. But it helps me get to, and we sat on the floor in a circle like that. And I'm sitting down with them. So some of it is just even, reconfiguring things.
Just sitting on the floor changes your...
It changes everything.
The dynamic.
They joke about it with me because I joke about it with them because my mom is a yoga teacher, so I'm all about sitting cross-legged on the floor. But it changes things up a lot as far as who we are as people together if we're sitting in a circle on the floor.
It's kind of interesting because hearing your experience with world language